Fam, what is cracking? It is your girl, Lillian Frances. And welcome back to the third episode in my sound synthesis series, in which I team up with Kilohearts and talk about the different types of synthesis that we can do in Faceplant. We already talked about FM synthesis and granular synthesis in the previous episodes, and today we're going to be talking about perhaps the most common and most well-known form of synthesis, subtractive synthesis. In subtractive synthesis, we create rich harmonic content with our waveforms and then sculpt out the frequencies by using filters and envelopes to get the sound that we want. And in order to demonstrate this, we are going to be synthesizing a snare from scratch. So without further ado, let us dive right in. Splash! So let's start by creating our fundamental tone. We're going to click here in the generator section and create an analog generator that then we switch over to be a sine wave. Now I'm going to turn this wave off of key tracking because right now as I play my keys, it changes the pitch. And I don't want that for my snare. You might want that for your snare if you're going to be like creating rolls and you want pitch to be involved, but I'm just going to create a snare that is going to always be the same pitch. And in order to do that, I'm going to turn my harmonic down to 0, which for a second we will hear nothing. But then as I bring up the hertz on my shift, you're going to hear that my note gets higher in pitch. We're going to keep it at about 400 for our snare. And obviously that sounds nothing like a snare, so we have to shape our sound using our volume envelope down here. So we're going to bring down our sustain and pull back our decay a little bit. Cool, until we have this nice fundamental hit. Now we're going to create an envelope for pitch that will quickly transpose it from high to low. And this is something a lot of drums do, like kick drums do it too, have this like little pitch bend at the beginning. And this is just because of the way the drum is actually formed and shaped and what it's made out of and like physics and stuff like that. So we're going to create a little envelope down here. And using this little modulator button, I'm going to click here to assign my envelope to the shift right here. And I'm going to pull it up just a little bit. And now I'm going to shape my envelope to be a pretty similar shape to what we did with the volume envelope of this hit. I'm going to hold down Option to create an exponential curve, drag it down, and then pull down the decay to be about around like 20 seconds. Cool, and now it's creating this kind of knocking sound. So without, with. Starting to sound a little more snarey. Let's call this the fundamental, emphasis on fun. And now it is time to add in our next layer, which is going to be a transient hit, just to really get that hit going. So we're going to add a new group and then add a sampler because we're going to be pulling in a sample for this one and then creating an output right here so we can actually hear it. Now I'm going to turn off this fundamental so we can just hear what we're hearing in our transient. And we're going to load in a sample. So we're just going to go to the Faceplant sample library and let's go to samples sound. I've never said that out loud. And let's find something with a transient that I like. Ooh, that has a good transient. Let's use clap Anna. Now let's further shape this transient by bringing down our sustain. And let's flatten out this decay curve. Sweet, now we have a nice little transient here. And I'm going to add a little bit of distortion just to get it really up in the mix. Perfect. All right, let's blend these two. Nice. Without, with. Now let's move on to our next layer, which is going to give the snare its character. We're going to add some noise. So let's go here and add another group and then click on this group and let's add noise here and then add an output. Cool. First thing I'm going to do is switch this over to random so that every time I launch the noise, it's going to launch a slightly different rendition. And what this is going to do is just create a little bit of variation in every snare. Because if you think about it, no snare is ever going to be the same when it's hit. So this is just one way to create a little bit of change happening. And like the rest, we're going to just shape the sound with our envelope. And it's going to have a little bit longer decay than our fundamental tone. Let's mix these two in together. Cool. And because we already have these two transients firing, I'm going to give this a little bit of an attack, a little bit of a swooshy attack. Fantastic. So let's shape this a little bit with some filters. I'm going to add 2 filters. My first filter, let's drag it above the output. My first filter is going to be a high pass filter because I don't want to need that low end. I don't need that rumble in my noise. Let's turn these guys off again. So from here, we can adjust the Q a little bit to get some different tones. Sweet. And now let's add another filter pull it up here, and this is going to be a low pass filter. We're gonna bring it almost all the way up, and we're just basically using this for the cue and for some of that like high end. Excellent. Now to create some more movement in this noise group, we're going to create an envelope to very quickly open and close our cutoffs. So let's click down here to create an envelope and assign them to the cutoff, just a little bit of both of these guys. Excellent. And now we're going to have just a little bit of an attack, around like 30 seconds, 20 seconds, and then a little bit of a decay. And now when we launch our noise, it's creating this kind of movement and more of like almost like a lasery sound. All right, let's go ahead and blend it all together. Now for our last layer, we're going to add a little bit more high-end excitement. So we're going to add a new group, add in another sampler and an output. And for this sample, we're going to load in a hi-hat, get some of that nice high energy. Sweet. And this high end, we're going to have a little bit more swoosh to it. So bring up the attack and then longer decay. And I'm going to add another filter, bring it up here, cut the low ends, add a little bit of Q, and then assign this envelope to it. Perfect. And I'm also going to add some distortion just to add the crunchy high end. Sweet. Give it a little spread. Love it. All right, cool. Now let's make sure they're all nice and mixed together. Sounding good. Next step, we are going to start processing these. So what I'm going to do is send kind of my transient and my fundamental over to lane 1 to be processed. And I'm going to send my more sustained signal over to lane 2 to get processed separately. So let's send this to lane 2 and send this to lane 2. So first, let's process my fundamental and my transient. That is the sound we have. I'm just going to go ahead and add a transient shaper to just create a little bit more of an attack. Now let's pop over to lane 2. Here we have. So this is that kind of high-end sustain, and we're going to distort it with a faturator and add some stereo width with this turbo delay. And let's create some more movement to this. Let's see what happens if we assign this to color. Cool, I like that. Next, we're gonna add a transient shaper to get a little bit more of that sustain happening here. Excellent, and then we're going to add just a 3-band EQ at the end to pull out any of those lows. Excellent, all right, we're gonna send lane 1 directly to lane 3 and now head over to lane 3 to process everything together. First thing I'm gonna do is add in an EQ. Let's get the slice EQ here. Click my edit button so I can look at it big time. Let's pull out these low lows. Don't need them. Let's boost that transient just a bit. There we go. I'm gonna take out that little guy a little bit, sounding a little bit fake to me. So before, after. It just kind of punches you a little bit more in the face. Next, we're gonna add some saturation. So distortion right here. Switch it over to saturate. There we go. Mix it in just a little bit. Next up, we're gonna add a disperser. Disperser is awesome, and what it does is kind of rotates the phase of your signal by creating frequency-dependent delays. So adding a little bit more delay into the lower signals and the higher signals, and what this does is create a little bit of like a laser type sound or a frequency sweep right at this cutoff right here. Can you kind of hear that lasery sound? Yeah. All right, I'm gonna bring the amount way down. And this just creates a really interesting kind of liquidy transient. And it's just a cool effect. And next we're gonna add in a compressor, because of course we need some compression on this guy. I'm gonna bring my ratio up to around 4:1 and bring down threshold. There we go, until I'm getting about 4 decibels of reduction. And it's important that I keep my attack relatively up just so that transient's getting through. There we go, something like 20 is working for this guy. Add a little bit of makeup gain. And this is just gonna help control our sound a little bit more. So let's hear it off. and on. And I'm gonna add one more transient shaper here, just to bring down the sustain, and up the attack just a little bit to shape the sound, and then just throw a limiter at the end. Cool. And just like that, we have created a delightful little snare. And this is ready to be used in your songs. All right, fam, so that is it for today. I hope you have learned a lot about subtractive synthesis and also phase plant and just snare/drum synthesis in general. If you enjoy my tutorials, you can find me at Lillian Frances Music on YouTube and at Lillian Frances on Instagram and all the other places. So please do join along if you would like, and I'm always releasing new content and having fun with it. So if you're wanting some more musical inspiration, a musical buddy, come hang out with me. And don't forget to like and subscribe because, you know, Kilohearts is awesome. I love their plugins. I love phase plant. I've had so much fun playing around with this thing. I'm delighted to team up with them in this video. So Kilohearts, thank you for having me. And to the rest of y'all, I will see you next time. Bye.